Good day, everyone. I'm Mike Twitty, your Pinellas County Property Appraiser, and I'd like to welcome you to our monthly public ed session. This one is focused on real estate professionals. So when we say real estate professionals, that means whether you're a realtor, you might be in the construction industry, you might be in title, lending, legal, any of those realms that touch real estate and valuation and property values. This is the place to be. We're going to touch on a bunch of things. I know our audience is already more knowledgeable than most because of the topics and it's what they do day to day. So I'm going to move quite briskly through a bunch of things because I want to leave some time at the end to go into the new website and show you some tips and tricks in there that will help you in your day-to-day work as professionals in the industry. So with that, we're going to move through the value stuff very, very rapidly. Some of you have seen this stuff in the past, but just want to do the blue bars depict just market value as determined by our office county-wide. The gold bars reflect taxable value. The difference between the two is a function of assessment caps, like your Save Our Homes cap and your 10% non-homestead cap, and exemptions. Those are what creates that differential there. We've got, as you can see, a record amount of value underneath the cap, so to speak. So tax bills are calculated off taxable value. So they're using the gold bar down here rather than the blue. So that makes a lot of saving. There's a lot of savings for our homeowners, our homesteaders, I should say, particularly. And then we have a very large amount of people that still are benefiting under the 10% cap because market values have risen so dramatically over the last few years. And we're finishing up our 2024 values. Remember, our values are always on January 1. So January 1 is our magic date. That's our effective date of value. So, so we're really looking at 2023 data to determine that January 1 of 2024 valuation that you'll see come onto our website in July. And then that will also be reflected on the trim notices that come out in August. So want to give you a quick reminder that before the trim notices ever come out by mid-July, by mid-July, it'll be live on our website. Encourage people to check out their values and their exemptions that are approved at that point, because if they see something wrong, they can have informal meetings with our staff at that point and before we ever get to trim notice time. So just wanted to throw that out there. I'm going to throw new construction on here. So those values are read off the left axis over here, but the right axis reflects new construction. So the past 5 years, we've been plus or minus $1 billion in new construction in Pinellas County, which is pretty good for a county that's, many would consider built out. However, this year, I can tell you that number is closer to 1.7 billion. So we had a dramatic number of properties that were finished before the January 1 of 2024 deadline that came onto the roll for this particular upcoming year. Residential market, you all know this quite well, but wanted to point out a few things, particularly down here. Obviously, we all know transaction count has been falling. We're back down to probably 2014 type transactional volume in count. Obviously, in transactional dollars, we are still up, and median sale price is still up, and the median price per square foot is in excess of $300 a square foot countywide. 2023, you can see the increase far less than what we saw the last couple of years. We were in excess of 20% increases in single family, which is quite dramatic. And of course, that's for just market value. So that's market value, not necessarily taxable value. Saw on that prior graphic. These are realtor stats here. So many of you are familiar with these, but we continue to see the month's supply rising for both single family and condo. And I believe these are still understated because of the way they calculate these. They really look back over the last 12 months and helping them determine that month's supply. They look at an absorption rate over the last 12, and we know that going back over 6 months ago, that pace was stronger than it was today. So I still feel like, in real terms, these things are a little bit understated. Condos are even higher. We're already at that, we've turned to potentially a buyer's market with condos, over that 6 month mark. All depends really on the project and the association and the health of that particular association. You all are familiar with the state law changes that occurred and the mandatory inspections. So I foresee we've got a good 2 to 3 years of recalibration of values related to condominiums. Some will be stable, they'll be fine if their association was well funded, they're in good health, property's in good condition. Not going to be an issue. It's the ones that aren't, and we have a lot of older condominium projects. So we're going to have some shakeout over the next few years on that. So this next graphic, this is just active listings over the last 5 years. Kind of tells the tale. This is when we came into the trench of low supply due to the pandemic. That was the trigger that really caused this slide, and now we are back up to basically where we were about 5 years ago, and potentially still climbing a little bit. Over the past decade, the peak for actives for residential was about 8,000 listings, and you can see we're here at about 7,000. There we're putting demand on top of the supply, so you can see the sales count over time. And again, we're down a little bit here, but overall, it's not a great amount of diversity, not as much as the swing that you see in supply. Supply is where the big swings come. Demand, even though we're down, that swing is not nearly as big as the active listing swing. All right. So what Save Our Homes is, I just want to point out a couple of quick things on a few slides. Since the start of Save Our Homes, we had only hit the 3% cap, I believe, 5 or 6 times since the mid-90s. We had typically hovered around plus or minus 2%. This obviously doesn't go back all the way to the start of it, but you can see just over, the past 11 years here that it was, or actually 12 years, it was plus or minus 2% over the long haul. Then the last 3 years in a row, we've hit the 3% cap. We've all experienced the inflationary measure that have been going on, and inflation is, far exceeded the 3% number. So we have hit that cap. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. And I want to point out, because we are at a transitional time with our values. So as our staff is looking around the county, while we're up countywide overall, we are seeing neighborhoods where values have dipped. We're seeing neighborhoods where it's flat, and we're seeing areas where they're still rising. A lot of that depends on the supply and demand within those respective areas. How motivated are people to get out of those properties, and how motivated people are to be in those particular neighborhoods. So those supply and demand dynamics are always in flux there. And we're at that pivotal time. Before, it was just everything was going up. And now we're back to, things are being negotiated heavier. And so we're seeing different things going on. So I want to point out and explain recapture to you all, because you may get questions from clients that purchase, and they may find that their just market value, or their market value, is starting to slide from where it was when they bought the property. However, they may notice that their tax bill is still rising, and that is a function of the recapture rule. So, for example, blue line here is just market value. The gold line is assessed value. So if you had so let's say, we're going over time, bought this house back here in year 1. Over time, market value is rising much faster than the 3% cap, or CPI, whichever was less in that particular year, creates that big differential. That differential, that's also the amount you can port from one property to the next, and one homesteaded property to the next. But once we hit a point where just market value may start to slide, so as market value slides, Assessed value can still rise because it's so far below just market value. So until those two lines meet, they won't be the same or they won't travel down together. Assessed value can never exceed just market value, but until that line catches up to that other value line, then they can't move together. In this example here, you see they touch here in year 5, market slides a little bit, so they both ride down together. Then the market turns back up. Market value is rising in excess of assessed value because of the cap. You're starting to create new differential again. So I just wanted to point that out. That is why you may experience that. That happened during the Great Recession. You know, values were falling dramatically. People couldn't understand why their assessed value could potentially be rising. All right, everybody's favorite topic, portability. So we're going to boogie through this. As you know, on the tax estimator that many of you use on a frequent basis, it will do the math for you. It works really well if you're doing a port from Pinellas to Pinellas. It will work statewide as well, but you have to look those other numbers up, and we prompt you to where to plug those numbers in, or plug those numbers in from the respective county you may be moving from or to. So portability, it's that differential, also known as the Save Our Homes benefit, the difference between just market and assessed value. You've got 3 tax years to port. The other, just remember when you do that calculation, whatever date you sell on, roll back to that preceding January 1 to start your 3-year calculation. It is not from date of sale. So a lot of people think I have 3 years from date of sale to port. That is not correct. Go back to January 1, it's 3 tax years. So you have to go back, do your calculation from there. Thankfully, we have 3 years now because of constitutional amendment. I helped champion that we got that through. Used to only be 2 tax years, which could be as short as a year and a day. If you sell at the end of the year, you've already burned your first tax year. That's what we were able to go to the legislature and convince them that when voters voted for it back in 2008, they thought they were getting 2 years from date of sale. Well, that's quite different than 2 tax years. So the later you sold in a year, the more you got penalized. So we were able to convince them to add an additional year, and that is now law. So, yes, go ahead. Okay. So how much can you move? How do you move it? So if it's a lateral or an upsize move, you can move the entire amount up to $500,000 of your differential or your Save Our Homes benefit. If it's a downsize and you're going from, you know, for example, let's say $500,000 just value down to a $250,000 just value. Keep in mind, it's the values the property appraiser puts on the property, not necessarily what you sold it for. So you look carefully at those numbers. In that case, say you had $100,000 of benefit, it would be prorated downward by 50%. So if you went down from 500 to 250, so it's just a simple proration going down in that manner. But the max again is 500,000. We actually have a fairly significant number because of value growth that are actually in excess of the 500,000 now. And that is essentially a big disincentive for people to actually sell those homes, because they might have $1 million of tax saving benefit right there. And if they were to move, they would lose, you know, half of that in that particular example. We already talked about this. This is just the timeline for portability Save Our Homes benefit. Yes. Yes, I'll go back. Mm-hmm. Right, right.
So it's a year for the home. Less than that. And that is that everything. The size is more to the year one. So I do want to years two. So they go back and say, I want to use the portability.
Yeah, so you're saying they rented for a year, right? And then, but then they go ahead and buy a new homestead. Yes, as long as they're within that time frame, they could have essentially bought and sold a couple of houses if they wanted to, or rented, or lived with a relative, or whatever the case may be.
This is what they have homestead. What they really say in February, the homestead stays that.
Right.
They didn't use it or they didn't transfer it. So they count the homestead for the rest of that year. Are they still safe in having the homestead for that year? It doesn't come back and say, oh, now they're using it for the order, so instead of coming off.
No, they're still fine. Yeah. Yeah.
Because make sure when somebody moves.
Yes.
They didn't order my house and something.
Right.
And you don't know.
I'm gonna touch on that too. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah, we'll touch on that. That, as we call it, the sneaky seller scenario, which is really understanding what the seller's intent is if you're a new buyer or buyer's agent. Okay, so the legislative session has already concluded. The standard session that this year happened to be from January to March, the 60-day session at the state, and there were a record number of ad valorem related tax bills filed, over 30, which made things quite interesting, and there was a lot to work on this session. A couple of things that made it across the goal line. The verification of eligibility for homestead exemption. This is related to 100% total and permanent disabled veterans and their surviving spouses. And it basically allows the property appraisers to provide a pre-qualification letter, because the way it works now is if you're 100% TMP, you're paying no property taxes, but then you buy another homestead. The way the law works now is you would have to go ahead and pay the prorated amount of taxes in that acquisition year. Then you can apply for a refund from the tax collector for your portion in the following year after you've applied for homestead. However, lenders said there were a lot of veterans that weren't able to actually qualify for the home because the real estate tax bill had to be factored in to the ratios for qualifying, and it was blowing them out, even though in the next year their taxes were essentially going to be zero. So this was really to help those lenders and those borrowers not face that pain and suffering out of the gate, and allow them to basically buy more house. So that passed, and we're working through. DOR has to create a form that works with that. So that will take effect for next year. The annual adjustment to homestead exemption, it gets a little tricky. So homestead exemption is broken. The 50,000 that you think of is really two bands of 25,000. So the first 25 applies to your value from 0 to 25,000. So that applies to all millage rates, including schools, all that, takes all that off. Then you jump 25,000 where you're paying taxes on all of that value. Then the next band, which is the band from 50 to 75,000 of assessed value, is the one that is going to be on the ballot as a constitutional amendment in November, that if voters vote yes at a minimum of 60% or more, that will add a CPI index increase to that second 25 band of homestead. So basically that band of homestead, that $25,000 exemption can grow by the consumer price index each year going forward. So that's what will be one of the many things that will be on the ballot this November. Another thing I would like to point out, because we have had, our share of storm damaged properties and flooded properties, the time period to commence a repair or rebuilding of a homesteaded property after it's been damaged has now been extended to 5 years. Before that, it was 3 years. And that time frame starts when you pull a permit. So you basically now have a 5-year window. So if you flooded and then you decide that you're in a special flood hazard area, you want to claim a calamity, you actually have a longer period of time to do so. A bill that did not pass that we worked on quite hard was related to trying to remove the seller's taxes off online listings. We know people are shopping through the online listing platforms, especially if they're first-time home buyers or people coming from out of state. That's usually their first stop. They're on Realtor.com, they're on Zillow, they're on Redfin, they're on a multitude of platforms that exist out there. And the property appraisers understood, how deceptive that could be for a new buyer, because the taxes being presented are the seller's taxes. And in many cases, if they've been a long-time homesteader, it's going to dramatically increase for the new buyer. So the bill essentially addressed the sophisticated platforms that had buyer payment calculators where they were using the seller's taxes. The bill states that they would have to actually use the data that all the property appraisers supply to DOR every year, and they would be able to do a far more accurate tax estimate for the new buyer to plug into their buyer payment calculator. The other option is if they don't have that payment calculator and it's just basically a flat listing page with no calculations going on, they just have to remove the seller's taxes and replace it with a link to their respective property appraiser's tax estimator. So that is the bill in a nutshell. We worked with the Florida Realtors and Zillow extensively through session. Couldn't get it quite over the goal line. We're hoping to do so next year, and we're going to keep working with them through the summer on some of those. I'm not going to put it on the record here. We can talk about that afterwards. All right, homestead eligibility. I'm just going to fly through some common missteps here. I want to make sure we're keeping on track so we have some time for website. As you all know, you must own and occupy to qualify for homestead, and your timely file deadline is March 1st. If you do still have clients, I encourage you, if you've sold homes, to people last year, it's always a great follow-up. It's that extra touch to your clients to go back and remind them, hey, did you remember to file for homestead? And if they didn't make the March 1st, they can still do an extenuating circumstances form and still apply for 2024 up until mid-September. But they need to get on it. So, the sooner the better on that. So, that's why we still harp on that March 1, because we have to deliver estimates to the taxing authorities at the end of this month and then to DOR in July. And we like to have all our exemption information as tight as possible before we start getting, through summer. Married couple qualifies for one homestead exemption. They are considered one family unit. So, and if you have, and it happens quite frequently where you have a couple that gets married and they both owned a home with homestead and they may forget, oh, wait, I need to let one of those go. Obviously, I'm the one that we're not living in. You also have situations where they both decide they're going to sell. And in those situations, they want to take the port from the largest one. If they're going to, both sell their respective, maybe they both had a condo and they both sell their condo and they're buying a house together. You want to take the port from the larger property or the one that has the larger amount of port. We talked a little bit, everybody knows about, in this group about how detrimental the cap reset can be from a long time, owner with Save Our Homes in place. We do run across people that get advice to move their homestead into an LLC. That is a bad move. That is going to reset your cap. So you do not want to do that. You can move homesteaded property into a trust. You just need to do it correctly. And we always encourage you to reach out, run that trust language. You know, if you're working with an attorney, hopefully run that by our in-house counsel. He's also our exemptions director. But Alex Luca is a Florida attorney, and he can review that trust language to make sure that Luca, Luca, and he can be reached at Luca, so ALUCA at pcpao.gov. So if you need to shoot him an email with some language, same thing with tenancy. If you've got issues with a deed and you're worried about the tenancy, you know, joint tenants with rights of survivorship or tenants in common and all, you know, and then all the little variations. There's a lot of little variations that can trip you up. And we highly encourage people not to do it yourself deeds. We see a lot of those jeopardizing people's homesteads. Yeah. And then another thing that people don't realize. So you have a long time owner of a property. They're not homesteaded because they owned another house, say in Ohio, and they had homestead up there. This was their second home down here, but now they've owned it for say a decade. They're benefiting from the 10% cap. So their assessed value is not as high as it could be. It's not at market. But then they come into our office and they want to file for homestead and they think it's going to save them money. Well, the reality is it's a status change. It triggers a cap reset. Even with no change of ownership, it's a change of status. And by state law, unfortunately, that creates a reset. So we spend a lot of time educating when we pick up on those. And if we see anything significant, we send them letters, and we call them cap reset letters or cap loss letters, and try and make sure, did you really want to do this? Here's the impact. We can do a little financial analysis. It's not 100% accurate because we don't know where future values are going to be, but we can usually do a pretty good job of saying it's going to be at least 3 years or at least 4 years before it makes sense for you to file for homestead. So we've had a lot of people rescind their homesteads once we have those conversations with them. That new homestead application, they'll roll it back. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. A lot of people do not realize that. Okay, here's your sneaky situation. So we'll go through this kind of quick. There's a lot of words on this screen and kind of break it down in simpler terms. The bottom line is if you're a buyer or representing a buyer, you really want to understand the seller's intentions. So if you're buying that home and let's say it's in February of 2024, you want to know a little bit about the seller. Where's the seller going? Are they going to buy another homesteaded property in Florida? Are they going to move out of the state? Or maybe did they already buy their replacement house or really already own 2 properties prior to the January 1 of 2024? Because if they did, then they could potentially move their homestead there and strip it off the one that they just sold in 2024. So this is the scenario you were referring to earlier. So you could put something in your sales contracts as a stipulation that might read something to the effect of, you know, the homestead in the year of acquisition will remain on the property, or the homestead in place at time of sale will remain on the property through the end of the current tax year or something like that. I'm just ripping that on the fly, but we could certainly make that a lot stronger. But a lot of times you can figure it out just by asking a few questions. You know, usually the seller's agent, they'll say something, you know, they'll say, oh, they're just going to rent for a year or they're moving to Tennessee. So then it's kind of a non-issue because there really wouldn't be a reason for them to strip that homestead unless you had a really, really bad negotiation and they had, you know, seller's remorse. And I've seen it. and they actually will go in just out of spite and remove a homestead. And if they do it before March 1, we can't do anything about it. Our policy in Pinellas is if it's a Pinellas to Pinellas homestead port. So for example, if they already own 2 homes in Pinellas and one was before the January 1, and they're claiming, well, we just sold this other one in February, but we were already living in the other one. So we're filing for homestead for January 1 of 2024, and we're going to strip it off that one. If they do it before March 1, which is the timely file homestead, we can't do anything about it. But if they go past March 1 and now they're doing extenuating circumstances, we can still deny them because we generally know that they're being sneaky about it. If they are doing it in another county, so if they already own that other home that they're moving their homestead to, say, let's say Citrus County, in that case, we can't do anything about it because the Citrus County, they can only have one homestead. And if the Citrus County property appraiser approves that before we even know about it, then we have to remove in our county. So there's slightly different scenarios going on, but the bottom line is you can best protect your buyers by understanding the seller's intentions. Clear as mud, right? Renting a homesteaded property. So we get this question a lot. So can you rent? The answer is yes, but only under very, very certain circumstances. Because if you rent for more than 30 days in 2 consecutive years, you lost your homestead. So you have to be very careful. So now what does that mean? Well, technically that means you could rent for a good portion of 1 year, and I'd say 1 tax year, as long as you don't pierce into that second year and break that 30 days in that second year. So, if you just rented the property in December, December 1, and you made it into, say, February, even though it was only a little bit over 2 months, you're in 2 different tax years, you're over your 30 days in both, and boom, you've jeopardized your homestead. So we generally just encourage people that are homesteaded not to rent their property, but the reason the law is written that way is because it does allow a little latitude. Say you have a sick parent out of state, you need to jump away and go take care of them for a little bit, and maybe you need to rent your house while you're gone, so you can collect a little bit of revenue while you're gone and come back. But again, it needs to be within those parameters. Some people will do that for 3 years and then come back and say, "Well, that's a problem," So just wanted to point that out. Changes to the deed. Again, we kind of touched on that with Mr. Luca in our office. He's the best one to vet any language that you may have. And that brings us up to the website. So you all know we've transitioned over from .org to .gov. So now it's an official site. I know you all drive this thing heavily. Here's kind of our heavy users. 70% of our users are returning users. So we really tried to build the site when we redeveloped it, catering to not only our property owners, but also those that use the site on a daily basis. We kind of already touched on the tax estimator. I know many of you know how to drive this, but just know there's lots of ways you can get to it. You can get to it right off the homepage from either the menu drop down or from the speed button on the side of the homepage. And then you can get there right from the parcel detail page as well in the quick pick toolbox that comes out off the right side. Difference here is that if you enter it from here, you don't have to enter any other additional information because you're already on the parcel. So it picks that information up. You enter it from these other 2 spots here, and you need to enter an address. All right, so will this work? That's the question. We were having some difficulties earlier. All right. I'll let your pointer off. Right, I don't think you're seeing that, so I'm going to have to unshare and reshare, I believe. All right. Still the same. So it's on Teams, but it doesn't want to go up there. All right. Well, for simplicity, so we can keep moving. Ladies, if you can look at that screen for this portion, because we're live online here. So we knew searching was the main function of the site, so we made that front and center. You don't have to go through that clunky left bar menu that used to be there. You can also get to all your various searches here. You've got your quick search, your map search, and your advanced search. You also have tangible personal property that you can search now. So that has business equipment inside of there. So any of our business users can access that data. So the radio buttons obviously change as you go across for those various searches. And then you have the My Location button. The location button is really designed for if you're on a mobile device. So if you're realtor or contractor or somebody, you're out on site and you pull up in the driveway of a home, you can literally hit that button on your cell phone or a tablet, and it will give you a short list of the properties that you're closest to. And usually the one you're sitting on is going to be the first one on the list. All you do is click that and it will open the parcel detail page. So we wanted to make it as interactive as possible. So that's a quick way to get to when you're out in the field to get to things. I'm going to scroll down the, before I do that, lots of help and data across the top. And you can obviously learn all about exemptions here. Your tools, forms, and data are all here, all the tax roll information, brochures and flyers, applications, data downloads, lots of information across here. That's more in the weed stuff. But we've created a whole bunch of how do I's. These answer a lot of the general questions and will guide you to where you need to be. Learn about is if you want to get in the weeds more about our office. There's also frequently asked questions in here as well. If you want to know more about how we arrive at our valuations, again, exemptions, the whole property tax process. We always put in legislative update information here, and then there's other information related to statutes and taxpayers' bills of rights and the property owner bill of rights. And then our community events. So you can register for public education, such as what we are doing right now, right here online. And then we also publish outreach that's live out in the community. So we'll have a list there. So, and then of course we have our contact us information. You've got social media here between Facebook and YouTube. So our YouTube channel, we publish these videos for our training sessions and other helpful information, other web tips and things like that will be posted on the YouTube channel. But we encourage you to follow our social media page because we try to do timely things there, and we try and do website tips as well that drip out there. So you'll get kind of a weekly tutorial of what's going on. Alerts here. Many of you may have noticed our mid-county office, which we are a very small part of. It's really a tax collector's office that we have a couple of desks in at mid-county off Starkey near Ulmerton. That is closed for renovations at this time. The tax collector wanted to do a complete reno of that building. So that is underway right now and won't be open till later this year or the beginning of next year. Our upcoming sessions and outreach, we usually publish here on our announcements. And as we come down the page, you've got obviously a carousel you can click through on any of these things. You have speed buttons off to the side where you can e-file for homestead, check the status, You know, a lot of people call in wondering the status of their applications. You can actually do that right here. So that's a quick way to jump in. You can change your mailing address, all that kind of information. And we've got Pinellas County stats of our parcel counts and our housing unit counts. So top row reflects by parcel. This reflects by units, because units and parcels are not a direct one-to-one relationship. While one single family home is one parcel and one unit, one parcel is also a 300 unit apartment complex. So it's not a one-to-one. So that's why we have it broken apart that way. Other things, you can sign up for, get on our e-newsletter mailing list. That comes out timely. We have different ones. We have one caters just to real estate professionals. So highly encourage you to sign up for that one. We shoot that out once a month near the beginning of the month. Also highlights what the education sessions are that are coming up, and anything timely about the tax roll process or legislation that may affect you related to our office. Got a calendar of dates to remember, and then articles and publications that may be of interest, and as well as all of our contact information. So all of that stuff is accessible just from the homepage. Like I said, you can get to things a lot of different ways. Let's go ahead and jump into parcel. This thing's cropping on me because I'm get back up here. Right, that wasn't the one I wanted. Picking a certain one because I want to show you. Okay, so that's what I want. All right, so your toolbox comes out on the side. Obviously, you can always get that out of the way, but it floats there as you go down the page to give you the things. You don't have to search around for links all over the site like you used to have to. This is all pretty much right in your wheelhouse. I don't know how many of you have used the custom report yet, but you can develop a custom report. It turns it into a PDF that you can then email or print. You can add things like the latest deed. So we're going well beyond just the property detail page. You know, you can do a large aerial, you can do the homestead status. If it has an elevation certificate, it will grab that. Obviously, your last trim notice and a FEMA letter, and then the property record card. Those are all things that you can build into one report, and you can choose exactly what you would like to put into that. You can see here, you can run comparable sales on this property. Obviously, run the tax estimator. The large map will jump you out to the big full screen map to navigate. We're going to do that in a minute. I want to show you some tips and tricks over there. You can apply for exemptions right on this parcel. Check out the tax bill over on the collector's site. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Okay.
That's one stuff.
Usually, but it's not 100%. Right. And it may, right. Well, it could be that we don't know about it, first of all. No. Well, we put on the property card what we do know about. So, but what the homeowner does, if they don't pull a permit, so they can have a higher fixture count than we actually reflect if it wasn't permitted. You know, because basically a fixture is any fixture where water comes out and it also has a drain. So water has to be able to come in and go out. So no. Mhm. Okay. Well, maybe years ago they removed a bathroom and didn't tell us. That can happen as well. Um, so yeah, if people see any anomalies like that, you know, let us know. Happy to, you know, obviously we'll inspect and try to get that information updated because we don't want to penalize anyone. We always want to try and get the numbers right. Sure. All right. So a couple of things. You've got these little accordions all over the site. Whenever you see that little caret symbol there, you can open up so you can execute searches right from here without having to go back to the home page. As well, any of these here are jump links. So if I want to jump down to the sales history on the page, I can do so. And you'll probably notice now we've also added grantor and grantee into the sales that information that did not used to be there. You also have your gross land area tallied up right here. This is important because especially when you have a property like this, a lot of our single family the land is reflected as front foot. So we value that in our models. You know, this one's 61 front feet. So that doesn't show you the actual land area. So you need to come up here to actually see the gross land area. The rest of the detail page, we tried to not move the cheese on people and keep it the general flow, but just clean it up and add some more data and information. We've worked really hard on trying to work with all of our jurisdictions to get our permit links as accurate as we can. They still break on occasion. And if you run into one that is broken, just shoot us an email and let us know. And our IT will jump right on it and we'll repair that because we still get jurisdictions. They'll change the URLs. They'll change vendors, things like that. They don't always let us know. So please let us know if you run into any breakages like that. Another thing I want to point out, if this was say this was a multifamily property that had multiple buildings, these boxes here aggregate all of the building cards from below. So say it was rental apartment has 7 buildings, you know, 300 units, you know, those would reflect here. You wouldn't have to do the math by going through all those building cards, which is what you used to have to do. And it also aggregates the living and gross square footage. Another little tip here, the current tax district that we show in the summary box is always that we have. So, you know, here we're in 2024, but let's just use, for example, let's say this isn't Seminole Fire. Let's say this particular parcel was the city of Seminole. Let's say last year it was in unincorporated Pinellas County. So if you were looking down here where the millage rate is in this tax district, and this is a hypothetical, so I'm just say that was showing unincorporated Pinellas down here. But then in 2024, it goes to the city of Seminole. We're going to reflect those differently. You would see the county district down here, and then you up here, you would see where it was newly annexed into in the current tax district. In this case, they're both the same. And in most cases, they will be the same. All right, let's jump into large map. Again, you've got a My Location button here. That will actually turn on a blue dot that will follow you around. So if you want to see where you are in relation to the specific properties you're looking at, if you move off your selected property, this one will always bring you back to the selected. You have measuring tools here. You have sales layers that you can turn on. And you'll now notice there's a lot more detail in the labels on the sales layers. And you have different map styles. So you've got 2 years of aerials, you've got countywide land use map, evacuation zones, a FEMA flood map, and some various non-filled maps if you need them for other graphic purposes. So those things are available to you on both the small map on the parcel detail page here, and when we jump out to the large map, most of those tools are still there. The one that changes is now you don't have one that goes back to your selected because this map function is slightly different. This will jump you back to countywide. So this will always zoom you out to the countywide map. So on this map, you get a nice little pop-up summary on whatever you click on the large map as you're surfing around. Lots of links here. You can always jump back to the full parcel detail. You can jump right into comp sales. This particular property is in an LLC ownership. This is smart enough. It triggered and knew that it was a corporate ownership, and it flipped that link to SunBiz. So if you need to check out ownership on a property, the underlying owners within the LLC, that will take you there. If this was a homesteaded property, which let's see, this one's homesteaded, you get the homestead status link instead. If you're on a property, I think there's one over here that's not homesteaded. So yes, this one over here is not homesteaded. This link is smart enough to check and realize they're not homesteaded, but they might be eligible. So they can click that link, it lights up red, and they can go right to. If it was a pending homestead, it would show up as yellow and would say pending. So just wanted to show you that's a quick little tool that we embedded some smart capabilities within the map. Yes. Yes. You've got street views and angled aerial views you can jump into as well. The flood map, again, that just turns on that FEMA flood map layer. So it changes that base map layer. The zoning map. So this was a tricky thing because we've got 24 different jurisdictions, and we wanted to try and take you as far as we could go. So that link, depending on the jurisdiction, will take you, if you're, for example, in unincorporated county, St. Petersburg or Clearwater, they have very robust GIS sites with their zoning and land use information. That will take you all the way down to their GIS map where you can get more information. If it's a beach town, that just might take you to a PDF with their various zoning districts on it. So it's whatever, as far as they'll let us go, basically, because we don't have the resources to maintain all that and keep everything current. So we link to what they have and we get down as deep as they'll let us go. So I want to make you aware of that stuff. We're up against it here, so not going to be able to get through quite as much as I wanted to. I tried to move kind of quick, but we did cover a lot of stuff today. I will encourage you also. Well, let's do this real quick. If you haven't used the comp sales tool, we baked in base default parameters. So if you're on a property and you hit that, it's smart enough to know that's a single family property. It's not waterfront. It doesn't have a pool. It's looking at the last 12 months of sales, plus or minus 15% of the living square footage, and plus or minus 15 years of year bill. So it's just a starting point for you within a mile radius of that subject property. So then when you scroll down, you can see we actually got quite a few comparable sales. There's a lot for this one within a mile. So I would typically want to narrow that down in that case, rerun that search. And now we're down to, there's still 23 properties. So, you might want to shave this down to the last few months or 6 months. And you can see how things are trending. So any of that can be changed, but just wanted to show you that that tool works rather quickly, and you can sort all these headings. Anything you click on will resort the group, but it does keep the subject at the top all the time. So because that's your subject property. So it's everything in public records, right? Doesn't matter if it's MLS or not MLS. It's everything in public records. So, you know, because some people, it comes in by default by distance, you can see here, but you may want to come in and sort it by square footage, you know, to try and better see any patterns or to price per square foot. So just want to let you know that's there. Obviously, you can kick all this data out if you want, and it'll bring that, it'll build that out and print each detail page for the ones you select. And we'll have a nice little summary table at the top of all the comparable sales. So I want to make sure you are aware of that. You can also even come in here and you can do some trickier things with, if you wanted to use it for commercial, you could come in, you could pick whatever use code you want to put in there, and then you could remove some of these other things that are more residential oriented. You can always make things neutral by just eliminating yes or no and just going select. It opens it wide up. The other search I encourage you to play with is our advanced search. So this is far more friendly than the old advanced search. It has loads of speed buttons in here, and come in here and play around with it. You can check out some of our other help videos online from prior sessions where we've touched on the advanced search. Again, there's accordions through here. You come in and you select your inputs to filter, and then you select what you want to come out into your Excel sheet, and it comes out in a really nice formatted Excel table and lots of information that you can garner from that. So with that, I know we're up against it at the end. Going to open it up to any additional questions. Kyle, you have anything online? Okay. All right. Well, I know I was jumping around fast, but I appreciate you all taking the time to spend your lunch with us. I could hear some stomachs growling out there. I think mine, unless that was just mine. But we appreciate what you guys do. We know you're the first touch with those clients. So the more we can work together, be on the same page. I look at you all as, you know, you helping our educational army to help our new buyers and our sellers understand this stuff. Because even if you're a seller and you've been in that home for a long time, they're not going to be thinking about the portability aspects necessarily. They forget about that stuff. It's been so long since they applied and had to deal with any of it. So I don't envy the job you have to do. I know you have to deal with lots of personalities. Every deal is different, but we all learn so much on each deal that does happen. And you're performing a great service, and I appreciate you all. Reach out to our office anytime. Our average on hold time, if you call in, is about 9 seconds. So we do answer the phone quite rapidly. And of course, we have lots of online resources for you all as well. So stay in touch with us, and we'll see you next time.